is going to a parts store for a code pull, a diagnosis. To a guy who does this every day and knows the systems, yes and no. To a parts store guy that isn't what he does every day, no. Code pull is not a diagnostic. So we hear this all the time in our business, is that I went to A, or I went to the other A, or I went to O, and I went to this person, or I went to this guy, or my code reader, this. The people think that they're doing a diagnosis. You're not. You're reading some codes, you're Googling what the possible causes are, and you're trying to figure that out. When you come to a shop, we're going to want to do our own diagnosis, and we're going to want to advise you our way. And this way, if there's a problem, it's on us and not on you unless there's additional problems. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a Mazda that was here after auction. Codes were cleared. The only light that was on was for... Caleb, turn that down! The only light code that was on was for a downstream oxygen sensor circuit. We replaced the oxygen sensor. We advised the dealership to put some mileage on it. Now they're back with the engine light on and a request for some other repairs. I'm going to show you the codes. We clear the codes after our job. We take a short road test. We cycle ignition a couple times to make sure that we don't have a failed circuit. And if it passes that little bit of diagnostic process, on the road the car goes. Can you turn that down a little bit? So let me show you the codes currently in the vehicle. So today we have this code, and you see the flashing red light. That means the readiness monitors and drive cycle is incomplete. So this still kind of throws a technician or a mechanic or a diagnostic guy for a loop, because we have a variable here that could still be another problem that's underlying. So we have lean bank 1, we have a PO430 now, catalytic converter efficiency below threshold, and I don't want to hear anyone say that the lean fuel code is tripping just bank 2 and not bank 1. It has lean bank 1, lean bank 2 with a cat efficiency on a 160,000 mile Mazda. And I will tell you, most Mazda owners, I'm not saying a whole lot bad about anyone. Most Mazdas I meet are in bad shape and neglected to death. And then we're going to go back into here. We're just going to scroll up, so just so you can confirm this. So now lean bank 1, bank 2 cat efficiency, and then we're going to go into freeze frame data. The average customer, the average person, the average parts store person has no idea what fuel trim data and freeze frame data means. So I'm going to take you through it. Closed loop. Calculated load was 35.7%. Engine coolant temperature, meaning the engine wasn't cold, the engine was hot, 172 degrees Fahrenheit. Short-term fuel trim, negative 16%. Long-term bank 1, 24%. So you see the problem there? There's a huge issue with this car at 172 degrees to have negative 16% fuel. But I need to know if this was at idle. Probably not. Saying calculated load was 35, almost 36%. So that typically tells me that the vehicle was off idle, meaning it was in an underload condition. All right, and then here you go. Short-term fuel trim bank 2, negative 3.9%. So I want to make sure I'm seeing that right. Zoom in here, Mr. Camera. Yeah. Is that right? Let me zoom in because my eyes are bugging today. So if that's a negative 1.6%, depending on what this vehicle is doing at that point in time. Yes. So negative 1.6 and negative 3.9. If this vehicle was at idle, someone's texting me. If this vehicle was at idle and I had that slight negative fuel trim, I'm okay with that. But as long as it swung up to 0 and didn't go too far into the positive, I'd be okay with that. So let's just keep going. This is a diagnosis. It's no different than your doctor ordering labs for you and doing a blood pressure test and everything else. This is me looking at the vitals. Engine RPM was 628 RPM. So now this tells me that for some reason or another, 32% load is weird unless the throttle body is really dirty, and that could skew that a little bit. But then again, I'm not going to really take that as the whole diagnostic. What I want to really make sure is that when it logged this in freeze frame data is that the vehicle was at idle and 0 miles per hour. So although you saw that the calculated load was 32%, it's skewed. Engine RPM was idle, vehicle speed was 0. Spark advance, air intake temperature sensor, and the mass airflow sensor. Okay. TPS. Oxygen sensor voltage, bank 1 sensor 1. Which is showing that it's rich. So it could have been in between the rich and lean. So typically when you have a low oxygen sensor reading, it means that it's not seeing the exhaust moving past it, typically. I'm not overly too concerned with that. Bank 1 sensor 2, don't care about that. Rachel, stop bothering me. Bank 2 sensor 1. So when it just logged the freeze frame data, concerns me because it's showing long-term fuel trims at idle, and that usually is not the case, which is crazy. So I don't suspect we have an oxygen sensor voltage issue. Bank 2 sensor 1, bank 2 sensor 2.
What it look like?
So it shows the short-term fuel trims at negative idle. It knows wheel speed. Short-term fuel trims were kind of inspected, and the vehicle's at idle and no miles per hour. So it can't pitch a long-term fuel trim code, although it showed the fuel trims for long-term were way out of spec.
Yeah, I mean, negative 3.9 isn't bad.
So where do we go from here? So what we're going to do first is that we're going to smoke test this, and then we're going to pull the mass airflow. We're going to smoke the intake from the boot all the way into the intake manifold, start there. We're going to visually inspect the mass airflow sensor for dirt, dust, and debris. I assure you 1,000% that this car probably has a nasty air filter, and the mass airflow sensor's never been maintained. Never. But based on that data there, it's not showing. It's showing long-term fuel trim as an issue, but why is it showing it at idle? So freeze frame is taking a picture of when the occurrence happened. So based on the negative, shortly negative fuel trims, that it could be misleading. So what I really want to do is put my scan tool on here,
Get some live data.
and get some real live data, because the code reader is showing me something that I don't really like to see. Yeah, sometimes I could just say, oh yeah, I know what this is, but right now I can't truly say, is this oxygen sensor? Is this fuel delivery? Is this mass airflow sensor? You see the codes 174 and 171. It's lean bank 1 and bank 2. Not saying rich, but according to what I'm seeing, that it was removing fuel from the idle, and if it was too rich, it would log like too rich, and your long-term fuel trims were maxed out, but when it freeze frame snapshotted that data, the vehicle has no mile per hour and is at idle. So is a parts store diagnosis good? Not unless they're guys like me, South Main Auto, and a bunch of other guys out here that are going to say, hey, just on a quick code pull, none of this really makes a whole lot of sense. We need to move on to a more thorough diagnosis. So this is the beginning of a diagnostic. And sometimes I could say, yeah, I could figure this out based on my experience. But right now, I have way too many variables and information that doesn't make sense. I suspect, like I said, it's possible we're going to find a vacuum leak. And then again, it's possible or not. They may have a dirty mass airflow sensor. We're going to need to do some digging. Thanks for watching.